Daredevil Season 1 was a remarkable piece of work, but does Season 2 hold up? Well, let's get right into it. Finally, after a full whole season, Matthew Murdock is able to get his hands on his suit. Though many liked his first costume, I prefer the classic red. So let's look at this picture right here. Why does this suit remind me more of a Batman than Daredevil? I mean, if you look at this picture when Ben Affleck was Daredevil, it looks classic. It looks like the classic Daredevil. So why does this 2003 version of Daredevil's costume have more similarities to the comics than that of the 2015 version? Well, let me try something. Take a good look at these fine pictures, right? Now I'm going to point out why it reminds me of Batman more than it does Daredevil. Alright, ready? You see the difference? Look, I know my photoshopping skills is not on point, but I feel like that nose piece could have been done without, then it would look more like a Daredevil, less like a Batman. But that's a little nitpick of the costume. But overall, I really like it. I love the combo of the red and black. It wasn't pure red, which is not a bad thing, but red and black, cool combo. Charlie Cox again perfects embodying the persona of Matthew Murdock and Daredevil. The character of Foggy Nelson didn't really seem to have much to do. I mean, in the first half of the season, he comes in conflict with Reyes, but after she's killed off, there's nothing really left for him to do. I mean, he broke off Nelson and Murdock. He basically detached himself from Murdock's life. The only thing left that ties him back to Daredevil is his friendship. Which, you know, is cool, because friendship is key. Karen Page's character seems to take on a more romantic role, as obviously seen when she shows her affections to Daredevil. Just to sum up my feelings towards the returning cast members, they did a great job. Some even better than the last season, and some weren't given much. Anyways, let's talk about some of the new characters. John Bernthal's The Punisher finally makes his first appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even though I was on board with the guy's acting skills, I was a little nitpicky of him just being not as muscly as the Punisher we're used to seeing. But the dude's a great actor, you gotta admit. But looks does not always triumph over performance. From the get-go, I was set on believing that John Bernthal is in fact the Punisher. Elektra also makes her return from the 2003 disaster, with a new actress in town. She gets introduced in episode 4 or 5, then she hides in the shadow after like episode 9, and then she comes back out in episode 11 or 12 or something. Which brings me to the biggest problem of this season. It's not really a big problem, but it's one of the more major problems that I have. The problems that I have are really minuscule. Season 2 seems to be much more overstuffed and less centralized when compared to Season 1. Season 1, you were introduced to Daredevil and his backstory, as well as the villain Kingpins. The audience was well aware of where they both grew up and their point of views of society. Obviously, the main villain of Season 1 was Wilson Fisk, but Season 2 could not be centralized as much as Season 1, as the show had to focus on two villains. Well, anti-heroes at the end. The Punisher and Elektra. The show found it really hard to balance the two out, and looking back at the whole thing, there was a lot of conveniences. From episode 1 to 4, Daredevil's main villain is the Punisher. It focuses on Frank Castle's way of taking down bad guys, which is a pretty clean and nice story, and it was very interesting. But then halfway through the season, the Punisher gets caught, and he gets into trouble with law and this whole thing about court, and whether he deserves to be put in jail, or an asylum, or rehab or something, so someone has to fill his place. And little do you know, Elektra fills in that gap. So right when one villain backs off, another comes in just to fill in that void of having that superhero feeling, you know what I mean? There has to be a villain at all times. So basically, as the Punisher left, Elektra came in, and as Elektra left, the Punisher came in. Now, like I said before, this isn't a huge problem. I just found it one of the weaknesses of the season. And Stick returns! I loved him in the last season, and I loved him even more in this season. The dude had more things to do now, while also supporting the backstory of Daredevil and Elektra, tying those little loose ends up. And I always wanted to see more of him. He was such a badass character from the last season, I couldn't get enough of him. And I'm happy to say that Stick this season really kicks some ass. And speaking of returning characters, the Kingpin shows up again. What? Oh my god! Before I started watching the show, actually, I went on Rotten Tomatoes to see how it was doing. It was hanging at around a 90% at the time. And I checked the cast list. I was hoping to see Wilson Fisk in the cast list, maybe like a heads up or something, to know if he's actually in this season, because I really liked his character. But sadly, no, Vincent D'Onofrio did not show up on the list. But I was really surprised to see him in the end of episode 9. He wasn't listed as a recurring character because he was listed as a special guest star. Now that is some good secrecy. And last thing I'm going to talk about is the action scenes. Oh my god. Seriously, Daredevil has one of the best action hero scenes you'll ever see, besides Captain America the Winter Soldier. But you know, that's a high budget movie and, you know, TV show, movie, can't really compare the two. One of the one-shot, one-take scenes from Season 1 of Daredevil actually carried over to Season 2. But seriously, sometimes you forget that dude is blind. I mean, Stan Lee once said that Daredevil's radar sense is actually stronger than Spider-Man's spider sense. I mean, those are some really strong senses. I mean, I like the common sense. Can I have some? Anyways, guys, I think that Daredevil Season 2 is a phenomenal piece of work. It has returning cast members with promising performances and great choreography with fight action scenes. I love the Punisher and I love Elektra, but I felt like that their two storylines could have been welded together more coherently, so that the story could flow better. I'm gonna give Daredevil Season 2 an 87%. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Alright, love you, bye!